On today's episode, we have two special guests from the product design team at Commure. Our first guest is Alex Young-Davies, who's the lead product designer for Commure's Air EHR platform and leads all efforts that relate to user experience and user delight across the product. He initially began his career as an industrial designer, graduating from Carleton University School of Industrial Design, and even earned 3 different awards for his capstone project. After discovering an interest in digital design and the opportunity for applying the same human-centered design thinking approach to the ever more digital life we're leading, Alex transitioned to design roles focused more on digital product design. Having worked in various startups across multiple sectors, such as manufacturing AI, biotechnology, and now healthcare, Alex has found a deep passion in taking products from 0 to 1 and incorporating a strong presence for user experience early in the product development process. Our second guest is Cyvian Chen, who's the lead product designer for Ambient AI, owning the end-to-end design for Commure's AI-powered solutions, streamlining clinical documentation. Designing for social impact, particularly healthcare and accessibility, it has been a central theme of Cyvian's work since her study at Rhode Island School of Design. She even won a social impact design competition where she designed an educational board game aimed to explain health policy. Cyvian focuses on making AI accessible to providers across the healthcare ecosystem and has led a complete redesign of Ambient AI to make it more intuitive, beautiful, and scalable. Alex, Cyvian, thanks for joining me today. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Glad to join.
Yes, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Beginning your career initially as an industrial designer, it seems like you had a passion for using design to solve problems in physical medium. How did you come across discovering an interest on the kind of design side of things and now leading you to Commure?
When I initially went to school, I went to school for industrial design, and I think I was always like a builder when I was a kid growing up. I loved to just build things. And I always had a real interest in the way things looked and aesthetics and appearance. And while initially I was kind of on the path towards architecture, somewhere along the way I discovered industrial design, and I really like the more utilitarian kind of element of it. It's more for everyday things, this table or the way that this mic looks and stuff. And the more that I dived into industrial design, I saw it as a really cool space because by the nature of what lots of people do in any career type, people solve problems. That's what you do as a scientist. That's what you do as a scientist. It's what you do as an engineer. It's also what you do as a designer. But I think industrial design to me was the space where I felt like it really intersected with the ability to make things that worked well and also looked nice. And that makes it sound a little bit superficial, but I think, it goes a long way when a product is designed not only to work super well and it just kind of seamlessly fits into your life when it's the case, but also when it feels nice and it looks nice and you kind of have that satisfaction of having a product or being proud to have it on your shelf kind of thing. And so I think I was really drawn towards the combination of those things, being able to solve problems as well as being able to do it in an elegant way.
Mm-hmm. Cyvian, would love to kind of hear about your journey. What kind of inspired you to explore design and now leading you here to Commure today?
Yeah, similar to Alex, I also came from industrial design background. And my path in industrial design was a little different from Alex. At school, I was, through a student club, I was exposed to the field of social impact design, which is you design to solve a social problem. And that just made me feel really fulfilled. It felt empowering to use what you learned in school and to solve for problem that people struggle with, and not just design another consumer water bottle or chair or table, which we can always have more, but I feel we already have a lot of people designing for that, and that kind of led me to the field of healthcare.
Previously you were also at Dorsal Health Do you mind kind of walking us through what kind of projects you got to work on during your time there?
Yeah, Dorsal Health is a patient-facing musculoskeletal pain care clinic. Originally, it provided virtual care. So I was hired as a designer there to build from 0 to 1 its first virtual care platform, and also including a provider-facing side, so a simplified version of the EHR, similar to what Alex is building here. And that kind of led me just through, thinking about how to build something from 0 to 1, thinking about how to build a design system, so a lot of component can be reusable and scalable as the business grow.
Yeah. Taking a few steps back, how would you say your experience in industrial design and accessibility-focused design influence your approach to healthcare UX?
I think in industrial design, the term that is often used when you're going through the ID, as it's sometimes called, ID education, a real kind of core element of it, and this is, I believe, universal. We went to different schools for industrial design, but I'm pretty sure we've talked about this in the past. The concept of human-centered design. And so often people, when they hear or know industrial design, they think of just physical product design. In some cases, like Cyvian mentioned, for tables, for water bottles. But really what is at the core of it is applying the thinking of problem solving to everyday problems and needs that people have. And so that when you look at it in that way, it kind of expands beyond just the realm of physical products, and you start to get into the social impact of how design can be useful and impactful. And then you also get into and that's kind of how you float into the space of UX design and digital product design, because even though we might not be putting together things that you can hold with your hands, we're still putting together experiences where we have people interacting with products, and those products are just no longer physical. They're digital, and that means that the interaction is different, and the style of that interaction might have its own nuances and challenges. But at the end of the day, healthcare, like many other industries, is full of people who want to try and help people, and there are hurdles that they have to overcome to being able to do that. And so I think industrial design just instilled this kind of mentality of, what is someone's core problem, what is their core motivation, and how can you try and connect that starting point to that end point. And for us, it just means doing that through software and the way that interfaces look and the way that people interact with these tools to enable them to, improve documentation when it comes to the healthcare space, or to improve the experience of lining a bunch of patients up for a day so that things go smoothly and, business functions as normal, people get the healthcare that they need, and then everybody can ideally just kind of go about the rest of their day and life.
Yeah, absolutely. Cyvian, you've led a redesign of ambient AI. What were the biggest priorities in making it more scalable and intuitive?
Yeah, I think a big focus of the redesign was about how can we make this tool that's supposed to streamline providers' workflow very easy to understand, making all of the call to action really obvious and what they do really obvious, and making the flow really seamless. So when they see a patient, start the visit, start recording, and all the way to looking at the actual scribe or generated note, it's a really streamlined experience where they don't really need any formal training or education. They can just look at it and be able to understand what they're supposed to do on the screen and how this content can help them. And scalability wise is when I redesigned the ambient AI product, it was still at a very early stage, but we already see how we have added a lot of features from its day one. And we also have like a sense of what other feature we might want to add onto it to like help with this entire process. So just like making sure there is screen space for all of the future features and actions and buttons. Even now, I'm running out of space for buttons in some cases. But that's just, the struggle or challenge of designing for like scalable product.
Yeah. You mentioned, kind of running out of space for certain buttons. How do you go about kind of prioritizing, like which ones to choose on the screen?
I think at the end of the day, it's just like thinking about what's actually important for the provider. What's the most used ones? What are the ones that are less important? And we can probably like hide them in some drop-down menus. It's like Alex mentioned about like user-centered design. It always go back to the user needs.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in designing healthcare products that are both intuitive for users, but also meeting the complex needs of healthcare professionals?
I think one of the greatest challenges that I know I had to work through when I first arrived and was first acquainted with the healthcare space, and it sounds pretty straightforward when you say it, but it's getting over the idea that a screen, because the products we make here primarily live on screens, a screen that is simple and has lots of white space and is like very elegant in its appearance is the only way to get a successful product or a successful screen for a feature. That in some cases you can do that. In other cases, I won't say it's not possible, but it's just not the only way to achieve success. And I think, if we look historically, like we mentioned, like the product that I lead UX design on is AIR, the EHR software. If you look at historical EHR software, it's like just, I won't say a mess because a mess is not the right word. But there's a lot of stuff everywhere on the screen. It's a lot of interactive content, different tabs, different buttons, different menus, different drop downs. Yet somehow there's lots of people out there who feel like these work great. So I think initially when we set about trying to create an EHR system that stands out from the rest, intuitively we think, okay, lots of these software look like they were initially built and designed, around the 2010s era, and for some of them that's just true. Yeah. And that means that they lag behind not only in just visual appearance, but also in standards, like standard UX practices and typical screen information hierarchy approaches, things that we've become used to seeing in our modern products nowadays, like your Apple software or your Windows browsers. But because these softwares are like so massive and it takes so long to migrate these kinds of things, a lot of them are truly just living a little bit in the past in terms of the world and what UX has to offer in that new world. So I think what kind of unlocked some of the work for us was discarding the notion that it needed to be very spacey, very like minimal, and instead focusing our efforts on how can we make a screen that is both very dense of information but organized in such a manner that it is still very useful and very easy for someone to break down. How can we reduce the cognitive burden of interacting with it without actually having to reduce the amount of content we show at once? And I think, I think once we started retaking that approach, things started working a lot better. We had better success when it came to certain features that went out, and in full circle, it even actually then unlocked ways that we could then actually simplify the screens, like visually, by understanding what core elements really were needed and what are non-negotiables, what are actual fluff, and then looking to make a more kind of customized approach where we can really slim down the content as opposed to just getting rid of content. And then that puts us in a good position to make EHRs that really, I believe anyways, are adopting modern day practices in terms of good UX practices when building products, but not doing so at the sacrifice of like useful content, useful information.
Yeah. You both mentioned taking products from 0 to 1. Can you walk us through your process of designing a new product in the healthcare space, especially when it comes to product that's in the early stages of development?
I would say the process can look a little different from product to product. And for ambient AI, it's a little bit different just because a few months back when I was working on the redesign projects, like we have some idea of like some feature we want to add on in the next like few months, but like there's no way I can see where AI is going to go and how we're going to take this product forward in like another year or two. So in that case, it's just thinking about like infinitely scalable UX patterns, and like even now I'm like going back to some of the decision that's made then and like adjusting them for the current need and potentially future needs. And it's just like a lot of time is starting from all the flows, all the features, and we kind of like map them out in what we call information architecture, of like where you start as a product, how many page or how many tab in the navigation we might have, and what content go into each tab. And in that case, we can like have a good understanding of like future content, which category it really falls under, and where we might put that page under when the product grow and scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That I definitely relate to that answer as well, and the experiences that I've had, having worked at a few startups myself. What I've found to be a successful way, at least from the design side of things, to move products from this like 0 to 1 space, and this is what I've seen at the last couple startups I've been at, like Raven AI, Enable Medicine, and then now working here at Camir, is that almost above all else, you need to have focus, and that's a very like non-specific thing to say, but what I mean by that is that customers will always want every feature and they'll always want it tomorrow. Investors will always want more features and they'll always want it soon. But when it comes to building products that are successful, there are tiers of things that contribute to that. And one of them are core fundamental needs. And then, on top of that, there's like auxiliary needs that complement the fundamental needs and expand the usefulness and the usability of the product in its target market. And then on top of that, there's, quality of life features and product expansions, and then like breaking into new sectors, etc. Without that first level of like core focus for fundamental product needs, the product never gets off the ground. So for example, Google Docs is a great one. It was trying to compete with Microsoft Word. It's a really obviously big and successful product that's been around for a long time. Today, Google Docs is very full. It can do lots of things. You can format, add media, add chapters, embed it into different types of things around the Google Suite. But if you had to eliminate stuff and you had to decide what are the core features that it couldn't run without of, that would probably be like basic text input and real-time collaboration, because those are the things that make the goal of what Google Docs was supposed to be successful. Like and it might be hard sometimes to look at all the things that you want, and you might say, well, I need all of those because they make the product great. But that's a little different from drawing a line of what does it need to survive versus what's going to make it great when the product matures. So in Google Docs, if you don't have like text formatting, your life's probably going to be a little bit harder, but it still works. The real fundamental needs are, can you write stuff? Because it's a document creation tool. You need to be able to write things. And then can you collaborate with people? And that's the differentiating factor that differentiated it from like Microsoft Word or TextEdit or Apple's Pages. And so in the 0 to 1 stage, it is super, super important as a designer and beyond just being a designer, but from the designer's perspective to try and carve out what are the core pillars of what's going to make this product successful and focus on getting those done. And then once you have those done, then you have a really good foundation to start building auxiliary features and quality of life features and things that down the road will make the product more mature as a whole.
Yeah. Something that stands out to me is you both kind of touch on trying to think about, like, can this product scale? As a designer today, what piece of advice would you give your younger self, kind of just getting out of college and jumping into the world of design?
I've got one. Yeah.
You could go first. That's a good question.
Yeah. What piece of advice for making a product scale and playing a role as a designer in that? I would say talk to your colleagues. There are so many companies and products that work in silos. And what that means is, like, if you have like a map full of arrows, if you're not all moving in the same direction, you're pulling against each other. Mm-hmm. And so here, one thing that I think, Cyvian and I are trying to strengthen on the design end is talking to product managers, talking to project managers, talking to engineers, and making sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what the next most important thing to do is. And there's always going to be a million things to do. But what I tell myself is that there's literally always going to be the next business day. There's never not going to be the next business day. So if you can talk with your teammates and get on the same page about what is the next most important thing to do, that puts you in a good position as a designer to know how you can be impactful and provide value. And it also shows the team, it gives you the opportunity to show the team how design can be influential and impactful in that process.
Yeah.
Talk to your colleagues, friends.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. And just adding on to that, for my younger self personally, because I came from art school background, I wasn't technical at all. I didn't really understand, how design is really implemented on like the engineering side. So I would say just beyond what Alex was saying, I would definitely tell myself to talk to engineers more, because at the time I wasn't familiar with design system, how it works, how it gets implemented, in what way I could design it that will align with how developer might implement it, and in the future when we have to expand all the components or patterns, it's also expanding the same way developers are able to do. So I think just beyond business strategy wise, also implementation side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can I add a second comment on top of that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. So I talked a little bit about workplace stuff, and Cyvian talked a little bit more about some of the technical things and how that relates to relationships. I want to add to that and say that in addition to talking to your teammates, also and this kind of goes, I guess, beyond healthcare specific or product scaling, but as an earlier version of myself, I would say talk to just other designers and other non-designers so that you can learn what you don't know. Yeah. And so, we're product designers. We know the details and intricacies of building design systems and what components go into that, and how does a tokenized system work versus a non-tokenized system, and what's a good, I know this is a lot of jargon, but and what's a good standard practice layout, all that kind of stuff. But we're not the experts when it comes to how hard is this to turn from a Figma prototype into interactive elements made out of code. And the more that we talk with developers, we can build a stronger understanding and a stronger intuition of I'm making this, it might cause someone to have a headache down the road. Maybe I should consider that. And then also same thing goes for product managers. I guess I am kind of reiterating my point of talk to people, but with the different focus of it's their domain of expertise to think about what does the roadmap look like. But the more that you talk to them and learn about how that works, you can start to build that into your thinking. So you can build screens that anticipate new features a year from now, and so you're not redesigning it every 6 months. So yeah, talk to people to learn what you don't know as well, and that'll help you grow as a designer, both in your technical skills and also in your soft skills. So
yeah. How do you envision the role of AI and machine learning in improving user experiences for healthcare products, especially in EHR platforms like Athelis' Air?
Ooh, okay, well, I'll talk a bit about Air, and then I'll let Cyvian talk about Ambient, because Ambient is the AI powerhouse of the Camir product suite. But in air, the opportunity lies in just making, again, I'm going to start with like a very non-descriptive sentence, and then I'm going to describe it more. But I think the power lies in making people's lives easier through just like removing the actual interactions they have with the product. Traditional EHRs and EMRs are so tedious to interact with because they require you to document everything that happens in a patient interaction. And, that's everything from obvious stuff such as like, what we call the chief complaint, which is like, what is the main reason you're coming in? What's the main pain you're having? All the way down to like, how many minutes did you perform this one particular exercise, and in what like modality was it done or paired with? And there's just like a whole range of highly detailed to highly broad, but very like specific in nature kind of information that is required to be input. And it means that while this healthcare provider should be focusing on the patient that they're tending to, instead they're just like smashing away at a keyboard, because all the billing that goes into the healthcare, as well as compliance in order to make sure that everything is up to snuff in terms of proper practice, needs to be documented, and it's just constantly pulling the provider away from interacting with the person that they're actually supposed to be tending to.
Right.
And so the way that we're trying to look at this in Commure and for AIR is, how can we use these really powerful LLM models and a lot of voice-to-text interpretation, which I'll let Cyvian talk a little bit more about afterwards. But how can we use those tools to try and just take away as much of the keyboard interaction as possible? How can we make it so that a provider doesn't have to click into every single text box to write, what is the subjective pain? What is the objective observations? What is the plan? What is the assessment based on the diagnostics, etc.? Can we capture that mainly through voice, and then have that like populate throughout all of the software, so that all that they need to do in the end is, after they've spent their entire appointment focusing on the patient, all they have to do afterwards is just give a verbal description of what happened. And then we on our end can take that and extrapolate what that means, and then make sure it's meeting all compliance and making sure that we're filling everything out that we need to do for billing, etc., and make it really easy for them to just go from one patient to the next, and make it feel like, make the EHR feel like a side quest. Like their primary quest should be tending to the patient, and if we can make using our product feel like a side quest, that's like a good measure of success, I think. But I'll let Cyvian talk more about the kind of nuances of what it's like to work with AI, because Ambient is, like I said, the powerhouse of AI in the Commure product suite.
Yeah, Ambience has been, I think Alex and my products are like tackling the same problem from different angle. EHR is trying to reinvent the wheel, make it more simple, make it more easy to interact with, whereas MBN is kind of like an extra tool for people who might not be using our EHR. The goal is kind of for them to never have to interact with other EHR ever again. They can just record their patient visit, generate the note, and import it into EHR, and everything is filled out the way it's supposed to. And they can just go about their day or see other patient. And that's the primary goal of Ambient. So a lot of this come into how do we translate the very complex patient-doctor conversation into very succinct note in the style that providers want. A lot of this also come into personalized AI settings and prompts. And one challenge for design is AI is such a new technology. A lot of us who work in tech don't even know how to use AI. A lot of providers are maybe not as tech savvy. How do we make them understand how they can customize this new AI tool to their own needs and style? And then on top of that, what we're starting to think about now is because we're already generating all of providers know, we're actually getting a lot of context about providers' patients. How can we now provide more context to providers before they start the visit, so they don't have to look through years or years of patient records or like extremely long EHR summaries, and to like quickly extrapolate what patients coming in for, what are some relevant information, so they can like get to the patient and like start talking to them like very quickly, and kind of like maybe provide more care to more patients in a day, or like be able to like have a more in-depth conversation with each patient.
And I think we're honestly we talk about the like very technical improvements that this provides of like time saving and ease of use and not having to click as many times or tap as many times and this kind of stuff, or not even having to interact with certain tools at all anymore. But I think the kind of level above it, where the real value of all of this comes in, is just that ability to allow these people to then reconnect with the patient again. Yeah. Because we constantly view technology as like the added benefit in the world. It's like we use technology for this, it's allowed us to do this, and that is all technically true. But it's really interesting that this new wave of technological advancement with AI is allowing us to now actually like step away from the technology interaction. And a provider used to look at a patient face to face all the time. Before they had a computer they had to type into all day. And I think somewhere along the way we thought we can make great software and we can do all these things for you. And now they're sitting the whole time typing in a computer. And so it's actually, in a way, we've stepped forward on documentation and compliance and making sure that people are getting proper healthcare when it comes to like policy. But we've actually taken a step back in terms of having a good life experience going through this. And so, all the kind of technical things we're talking about are actually just re-enabling us through these products to allow providers to then reconnect with their patients like they used to before.
Yeah. How do you measure success in product design? Is it thoroughly through user feedback, or are there other metrics you consider to gauge success?
I would say success in design is often silent. And the reason I say that is because good design, in theory, should come into your day and then out of your day without you really noticing. And to give an analogy, there's this concept of the Norman door. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Norman door. It's a concept. I won't go into history, but anyways, the idea is that you probably didn't really think too much about how you open the door to get in the office today or into the room in the booth where we are right now. And that's because the door works well. You come up to the door, you open it with the handle, you walk through the door, it closes usually on its own, which is pretty nice. And then you go about your day. And you probably didn't spend a lot of mental effort on that because it worked so well. And so that's a successful door. If you try and think like, oh, when was the last time I interacted with the door? Or like, when was the last time I had a notable interaction with the door? It's probably when you went to go like push it and it was a pull door. Mm-hmm. And the door didn't make it very obvious which one you were expected to do. And so I think it's a good analogy to share that, in maybe in engineering, and I don't want to speak too much to it because I'm not an engineer, but success is like you write this code and it performs the task it's aiming to do. Maybe it does a whole lot of complex calculations for something, or maybe it's relating a whole bunch of disparate information to yield you a cohesive result. But for design, if you make something and it's successful, ideally it's just a tool that comes into your life and out of your life without much notice. So that's why I would say success is largely silent. And if someone's like, that's great, then that's great. You hit it out of the park. Usually that's the case. There can be exceptions to that. But in the lead up to that, it can't be understated how important it is to incorporate things like user feedback. Because as an individual, you have your experiences that you've built up based on your history, who you are, your perspective on things, where you come from. And that's just your perspective. And even, we work on a design team of like 9-10 people, and sometimes the designers all agree, but we're all designers. We all have a similar mindset. We come from similar backgrounds in some senses and different backgrounds in other senses. But more often than not, you are not who you are designing for. And so it's like the value is immeasurable in being able to engage that, what sometimes we call voice of customer, and make sure that you're listening to them and making sure that their feedback is what's actually guiding the design work and not like personal preference or just a few perspectives.
Yeah. I want to add on to that to like beyond user feedback and user need, as like designer working at a tech company, part of the success matrix is also, one is the design, easy to build for engineer within reasonable range. We can always make design super fancy. It could take forever to build and not really worth it. And two, like is the design like driving business growth, satisfying customer needs and client needs, and three, like sometimes business grow and might not, sometimes like to satisfy business growth, we might also need to call extra attention to like certain features and functions that might not be, the primary user needs. Like for example, there is a feature in the our consumer-facing Commure ambient called Learn Format. When I was designing the feature, I got questioned from some of our design teammates about like why. So the feature itself is like you can click one of your notes and tell the AI to learn this format, and the AI will apply it to your future note. One of the questions I got was like, why isn't the AI doing that automatically to all of your nodes? Just like learn the pattern throughout all of the approved nodes and just improve over time. And part of the answer is that, as an AI software, we also need to call attention to this like glory of AI technology. We want to make our user feel like they can interact with the AI model and like customize this AI product to their needs, to make it feel like, to make this like supposedly back-end invisible learning process visible to the user, so that like actually drive more like impression and growth for us as a company.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex and Cyvian, it was great speaking with you guys today. I guess one final kind of question to wrap things up. What are you both kind of looking forward to this year, and any exciting features you can maybe share with everyone?
On the ambient side, I think one pretty exciting product we're launching very soon is that we acquired this company called Augmetics last year, and we're going through an effort of merging the original Athalis ambient AI with the Augmetics feature. Internally, we called it the super app, and we're launching it very soon. So I'm pretty excited about that.
One thing I'm looking forward to, we recently on the EHR, we did a lot of improvements on some of the kind of core things like I was talking about earlier of the like focus fundamental pillars. We've done a lot of improvement work on the calendar, because our calendar has like additional extraneous needs that you don't find in a typical calendar, and that means that we have to make accommodations for that. So there's lots of exciting stuff that's going out there. The thing I'm probably most excited for is that we're trying out a new way to do chart noting, and this is kind of the, not the only core element of an EHR, but a very, very fundamental part, and that's where you actually document what happened in the patient appointment. And in addition to trying to integrate like ambient AI to make most of that happen by voice, we're also trying to think of how we can redesign the way that a chart note looks. And that sounds basic on the surface, but as I mentioned earlier, there's tons and tons of things that you need to interact with on a chart note. And what we're working on right now is a way to not just kind of reduce that content or cover as much of it as we can with AI to reduce the amount of things that actually need to be interacted with, but also to take our interactive elements and try and strip them down as much as possible so that when you look at something, it feels a lot more approachable. and it feels a lot more intuitive to interact with. So I don't know when that's going out. We've got something that looks very different and breaks the mold from what you see in chart noting, just about like across the board. So we have to do some testing with it, get some user feedback, make sure that all of our assumptions are panning out. But that's really exciting. And so far what we're hearing from customers that we're testing with is that they're really excited about it and eager to see it go live. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that kind of be announced soon. And thanks to Alex and Cyvian for joining us today.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much for having us.